Then he says, this idea of all things are permissible for me, but not everything's beneficial. It's kind of like, you ever heard of a thyroid problem? Anybody heard of that? Thyroid issue? Okay, thyroid issue. Jason, do you have a thyroid issue?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys. Okay, so people have a thyroid issue sometimes have an equilibrium problem within their body. And you ever met that guy that's like this stinking big? He's like a pencil. He's skinny, and he can eat whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and how much he wants, but he never grows. You ever met that person or girl? Okay, and they're just like that. They're just like, whoa, and they never grow. But then there's people that you just look at a Sunday and you gain like 3 pounds, man. So bam, right there, right there for me. So right there, that's kind of this whole situation. Paul's saying, now that I understand grace and I'm not confined by the law, I'm looking at this whole thing called Christianity differently. And now I realize that there's certain things I'm going to be very weak with, and there's certain things I'm going to be able to be very strong with. And those things that are weak for me, even though they might be permissible, they may not be smart to go toward. And I think this speaks volumes to the whole idea of dating. Because for some of you, you're able to do this dating thing. You're able to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but your relationship with Christ is like right here, man. It's going and it's great. And that the relationship you're having with boyfriends or girlfriends is like this almost subsidiary thing. This thing that's off to the side, but it's not controlling your life. And you're like Paul. You're like, now that I understand this whole thing of grace, I can date. It's not a big deal. But then there's others of you in this category that you are absolutely addicted to relationships. You're addicted to having a relationship with somebody of the opposite sex. And you get something from it that was never intended for you to get. In fact, you're trying to get out of it only what Christ can give. At that point, you're like Paul. You're like, can I eat pork? Can I not eat pork? Am I going to balloon up? Is there something that's wrong with eating it? What's the why behind it? And that's what I want to look at this morning. So in your notes, I put this. Am I a slave to dating? Is it something that's controlling me or am I controlling it? And here's 3 things I think that'll make it clear for you. Number 1, do you get deep value from dating? Do you get deep value? Now, I'm not talking about value because here's the reality. Whenever someone shows us attention, we kind of go, oh, cool. Like when somebody goes, hey, dude, I like your glasses, man. There's new glasses. Those specs are cool. I'm kind of like, oh, cool, thank you. Thank you. Then there's other people walk up and say, you look very metrosexual with those on. I'm like, thanks a lot. Okay? Some of those comments sting. Some of them don't. But here's the reality. We do get value from other people. That's real. We want to say that's not going to happen. But do you get deep value? Do you learn about who you are from those people? Those of y'all think that I'm metro, I think you're like, you've probably got some kind of homosexual phobia, so that's your problem, And those of you that think the glasses are cool, you're right on, so I like you people. So here's the deal. Do you get deep value? And when I was growing up, I can think of one area of my life that this was real transparent. I saw it. When I was growing up and I was in high school, I loved to play soccer. It wasn't like a hobby. It was an obsession, okay? I ran 8 miles every day so I could just stay in shape for soccer. Now you couldn't get me around 1.5 miles without beating somebody up for the pain of it, okay? But when I was doing that, I was like really into soccer. I practiced it every day, out in the bag, man, always juggling the ball, always trying to find somebody to learn a new skill from. I got good enough, I went and played semi-pro, played in Europe for a while. I had a lot of fun with it. And I remember I was dating Susan during this season, and she was asking me, well, how obsessed are you with this thing, the soccer thing? And I actually remember saying this. I said, well, if you asked me to choose between you and soccer, you'd be gone. Now, when you look at how you value things in life, sometimes things get out of balance. Now, when I blew my knees, that comment looked pretty stupid because I knew I wasn't going anywhere with soccer once my knees went shot. But I think the same thing's true when you look at relationships. You may be pouring everything you have into this relationship with a girl or everything you have in this relationship with a guy. And what you don't realize is sooner or later, many times these relationships come and they go. And you've put so much value in it, you're left hanging. And then you're going, man, I wish I'd have kept God in his rightful place. If I had, this relationship breakup wouldn't sting as much as it is right now. That's the thing I think that Paul's trying to get us around, and the thing we can look at if we're really addicted to this thing. Now, by the way, now the relationship's much better. Soccer obviously has a lower priority in life, and Susan has a much higher priority as far as that goes. In fact, she's the number 1 under Jesus, all right? So number 2, am I addicted to dating? Do you invest more in your date than in Christ? And I'm not talking about what you buy him, okay? That doesn't work, okay? Well, I bought my girl CD, but I didn't tithe last week. I'm not talking about that, okay? When I'm looking at this whole idea of investment, it's a whole package deal. It's a whole package deal. What do I mean? It has to do with time. It has to do with money. It has to do with resources. It has to do with how much you're on the phone. You have to look at everything. In other words, let me kind of break it down a way for you to know if you've put your dating relationship above where Jesus is and you haven't balanced it out right. Here's a good way to think of it. When you wake up, what's your first thought? I remember when I had, in an unhealthy way, put a girl in my life way beyond where she should be as far as my relationship to Christ. And I remember she was the first thing I thought of when I woke up. Wonder what she's doing. Wonder where she is right now. Wonder if she's going to meet me at the locker at school. And I would wonder all these things. They were all very centered around what she was doing, and which is girls, same thing with the guys. But when your relationship with Jesus is right, and he's in this right spot, the first thing you think of in the morning is, God, it's so cool to be awake. It's so cool that you're going to use me again today. I want to submit my life and surrender to you fresh and new, that you would use me for your glory to reach someone today. Maybe even help my boyfriend or girlfriend grow into a better relationship. He is the centerpiece of everything. You think about, where am I spending my money? You think about, how much am I giving? You think about, how much of my time do I give in ministry? All these things, he becomes the centerpiece. That's when you know you're in a pretty good relationship and you're not addicted to dating. The third thing is this: if you're addicted to dating, you date without a plan or a purpose. You date without a plan or a purpose. When I was dating in high school, I had no idea why I was dating other than she was fine. Okay, that was the only thing in my brain that was processed. Man, she's hot, and I mean hot, you know, and it would be cool to take her out and date, get to know her. And it wasn't always an inappropriate thought that went through my brain, but quite often there was when I was in high school. And I was learning how to try and control that whole thing. But I was obsessed with this idea of dating. And if you'd asked me, why do you date? I would have said, I don't know, because it's a thing to do. I mean, that's what you would have got from me at that phase of my life. I had no purpose or direction or intention with why I was dating. Now that I get to look back on it, I can say, well, man, that really messed me up, because it put me in situations that I probably would have never found myself in if I would have just understood the design and the purpose for dating. So I came back to it and I'm like, if I could change that, what would I change in my mindset? And here's two things I think that fit into God's design for dating. One is that you honestly do get to learn how it is to hang out with somebody from the opposite sex. You get to learn what guys are like. You get to learn what gals are like. You get to learn how they're wired, what their motives are, what direction they're going. You get to learn to look for certain qualities. Girls, you look for certain qualities in guys. We learned last week, especially at the 11:30 service, that and Scott did such a good job with that if you'll just watch a guy and where he rests his eyes, you learn a lot about who he is. If he looks you eyeball to eyeball, it means he has great discipline and great respect for you as a whole. Guys, you'll learn a lot about girls by the way they dress. If they dress in an incredibly provocative way and want to draw your attention to that, it means that they haven't understood their true intrinsic value. You learn a lot through this thing called the dating process and hanging out with other people. You really do. And sometimes, if I had to go back and do it again, I would understand this, that I don't have to go out just with them. The reality is I could do that as a group and still get to learn this skill of getting to know other people without putting myself at a point of compromise. Call it a group date, call it a double date, whatever you want to call it. But that would have been a wise thing for me to do at that phase of my life. The other thing that I realize now is that the end purpose for dating, the way God designed it, is marriage. I didn't realize that when I was a teenager. I thought it was just to hang out and have fun. But then I realized very quickly that you can reach a point of frustration in your dating life, especially if you begin very early. Because what ends up happening is you begin dating this one person, you get to know them, you get the intimacy, you get emotionally intimately involved, and all these things are coming together, and then all of a sudden as a Christian, God says, whoop, physically you can't go there. He draws this line physically, and then you're left incredibly frustrated because every time you get together, the way you're wired is you want to go further physically, but God's put this roadblock in the way. And now you have to wait and wait and wait and wait, and it gets incredibly frustrating. And so I would rethink when I would start the dating process if I had to go back and do it again. So here's some